Welcome back to another session. In the session I covered previously, I spoke about vibration as a law. I also spoke about attraction as a law. And I made reference to the fact that the law of vibration is a primary law. The law of attraction is a secondary law. Depression is a vibrational state. It's a frequency. If you are in a state of depression, it means you are in resonance with depression. It also means that you've tuned up or tuned down to that frequency. I made reference to the fact that as I speak with you, there is music playing in this space. There are people speaking in this space. There's some entertainment taking place in this space. You can't hear it. I can't hear it. No one else can hear it. The reason being, you and I are connected to a different frequency, a different vibration, a different energy state or level. If I were to get a portable radio or my mobile phone, I can tune using the AM or the FM radios. I can tune into 91.5, 97.2, 105.6. And what you find is that as I move through these frequencies, eventually I get to a point where I can hear voices, the news, conversations, or I can hear music, a symphony, or I can tune forward and get to Capital FM or BBC One Extra. All of these are frequencies. If I tune out, I'm off those frequencies, I hear nothing. But those frequencies exist. They always exist because we are all simply energy resonating at a vibration and at a frequency. When we feel ill, that's a frequency. When we feel happy, that's a frequency. Happiness is a frequency. Depression is a frequency. And the key question is therefore, how do you get yourself out of that frequency called depression? And how do you stay away from that frequency called depression? I alluded to how in certain parts of Africa and certain parts of the Middle East and certain parts of Asia and America, amongst the poorest, there seems to be this perhaps conundrum. You are poor, you can barely eat, you can barely look after yourself and provide, your environment is not safe, but they are not depressed. And the reason is simply because they are on a different frequency. Now, depression is around and always around in every environment because it's simply an energy vibration, it's a state. And you have all of these positions or lines of vibration representing different, you might say, interests. They are not depressed. Whereas you come to somewhere like Great Britain, England, for example, and you find a lot of these young people, young men and young women, middle-aged men and middle-aged women, and older men and older women. We have the abundance of whatever we might want, everything at our fingertips. You know, the great kingdom, the great island, and despite abundance, we are depressed. And this quantity or the number of people being depressed increases every day. And the question is why? Well, in the session prior, I made reference to how many of us have moved to the same resonance or frequency as depression, and we've stayed there. And we've accepted where we are, and acceptance activates the law of attraction, and attraction brings depression to our lives, but vibration keeps, and the resonance you are on keeps depression in your life. And you have to do one of two things. You either have to move higher or you have to move lower. You have to move away from that frequency, and you do that, and that's the point of today's session, which is to address, well, how do you move up and down? What is the mechanism? What is the process? What is the thought process? What is the actions that one has to take? And that is the focus of today's session. This will be short because there is very little to be said about this a procedure. Many of us were not taught this as young people. This is something that we should be teaching young children as soon as they are able to understand words. Because much of our suffering in life is unnecessary, but we do so by omission or by commission based on our choices. There's a word that I haven't made reference to in this section of the series as much as I should have, and that word is desire. desire. And the question is, where does desire come from, and how is desire activating in its possibilities with regards to attraction and vibration? The mistake we all make is we think that when we use the word desire, we tend to use desire in a romantic setting to talk about something that we're drawn to, passion. I desire him or her, or I desire food. But desire works in every area of our life. It's a longing, it's a calling. Sometimes it's done purposefully, and sometimes it's done without purpose. When we do it purposefully, we're using insight and knowledge and understanding and wisdom sometimes, and we activate faith, and we have a desire for something and we expect it. On the other hand, when we work from the place of ignorance and we work from a place of worry and fear, that's a desire. So desire works. It doesn't have two faces, it just has one face, and that face is neither good nor bad. So your fears are your desires. Your faith are your desires. Your actions are your desires. Your worry and doubt are your desires. And the key thing to keep in mind is, if depression is a vibration, and you do not desire vibration, or the vibration called depression, depending on how strong an emotion you have with regards to that desire, you either move towards it or you move away from it. Let me explain that as much as I see if I can do a better job at explaining. Whatever you fear, you attract. Whatever you love, you attract. Because love is just energy or resonance, and fear is just energy or resonance. Desire is simply the mechanism that moves you. Desire works like a gear system. It accelerates you towards whatever you wish or want. And so if you have this fear, so when people say, I hate him, I hate that man, I hate what he represents, I hate that woman, I hate what she represents, I hate this ideology, you have to be careful. Whatever you hate, you attract. It's better to be indifferent. So the opposite of love should not be hate, it should be indifference. Because whatever you love, you attract. And the opposite of love, being hate, you attract. Indifference is therefore the key word. When you're dealing with things that perhaps you don't want to be in resonance with, just be indifferent. So with regards to depression, it's not in my vocabulary. I can talk about depression as part of this session, or teaching or conversing with people, but I do not desire depression. I'm indifferent to it. In the same manner, when I turn the dial of a radio and I get to 99.7, I just keep turning. It's not what I'm looking for. I just move and I'm indifferent. I get to a place where they're playing country music and I stop. I like this. And so I stop at that position and I enjoy the music, the melody, the advertisements, the conversations that come on that frequency. When I want to move away from the frequency, I turn the other way. I don't stay fixed. Sometimes I accept and therefore I attract and I remain at that resonance. And when I'm done, I reject and I move on to another frequency. You have to understand that in order to move from one vibrational state to another, one of the things you need to understand is how that mechanism works. It's very simple. The movement from one vibrational state to another only occurs on three planes of understanding. The first is thoughts. The second, most people will understand, it's what we call feelings. And the third is action. Your thoughts will create your feelings. Your feelings will create your actions, and vice versa. So emotion comes from motion, and motion creates emotion. I can feel sad and upset, and I can listen to some music, and in a short few minutes, I'm upbeat. I can also listen to some music that has a certain spacing between the notes, and I could feel sad. Why? Because the music was designed to touch and affect me in a certain way. So that music is on a resonance, it's on a vibration, and it takes me up or it brings me low. And if I stay there and accept it, I attract whatever that emotion is, which is why we can go to a movie, watch a film, and we start to well up. Our eyes start to well up and we cry. Or we can go to a movie, watch a film, and we walk out feeling as though we can take on the world. Why? is the vibration. So if you want to change a vibrational state, and if you want to move away from depression, the first thing you have to understand is, where do your thoughts come from? How are your feelings generated and your emotions? And who is causing you to take action? And what action are you taking? In order to understand these trio, one of the things you have to do is that understand this trio of words connect to results. So let's assume you're in a state of depression and anxiety. You don't focus on anxiety, you do not focus on depression. You focus on where you want to be. Because if you focus on what you do not want, and you say, well, I hate being depressed, you attract it. You focus on where you want to get to, your true north. And you keep your eyes on that prize, and you stay focused there. And by staying focused there, what you find is that you start to think of thoughts that are different to where you are. And by thinking of and keeping your focus on those thoughts based on where you want to get to, you start to turn the dial, and suddenly you move away from this state of depression or anxiety. It's really that simple. We can do it in many ways. Firstly, actively. Secondly, passively. Thirdly, you might say, I like to use the word sublingually, like from osmosis, and that simply means your environment. I don't know if you've ever been around people who are upbeat and happy and positive and excited about life and enthusiastic, and you could be the most miserable person, but you sit in their presence, and after a short while you find actually their energy is resonating on you. You're drawing because your environment is positive. They've drawn and created this bubble around you which is of a higher vibration, happiness and joy and peace and prosperity and gladness and desire for more, that it causes you to alter your state. Now, I know this for a fact. I'm naturally more of a serious person, and I have a few friends, and one comes to mind particularly. And I usually say to my beloved, when I'm around him, it's a joy to be around him, because he has a playful, happy disposition, doesn't take life too seriously, incredibly intelligent, incredibly smart, but he has this ability to use both his right and his left brain. And so whereas more analytical, he brings in more of the colours into life. And I find myself doing things that I used to do when I was 13 and 14 and 15. And that's partly because he has a beautiful state of resonance. And so in his presence, I can resonate at the same frequency. So one is environment, and I use the word osmosis, is that you get into the right environment and suddenly you find that things start to change. I have seldom found anyone who is around me who is depressed. Not because of anything I do, but partly because perhaps I'm not dwelling in the now. And that means even if you're depressed when you come to me, maybe there's something we're doing, we're going somewhere, we're trying something else, we're setting goals, we're taking a challenge, we're throwing ourselves off something as part of a risk pursuit, that it causes you to let go of your state and think about something beyond. And in that short period, people let go of how they feel. They're not focused on themselves. And sometimes they're just focused on staying alive. And that in itself shifts them away from that state. It's part of the reason why people who suffer from depression, one of the antidotes is, get out there and do stuff. I'm not saying live a little, get away from the safe and comfort zone. No one gets out alive, so take some risks, calculated, but take some risks, try different things, find out who you could be, get to the edge. You're taking up too much room, is allowing you to think about all the wrong things in your life. Just get out there and live. Now, let me bring today's session to a close by simply saying you have osmosis, but you also have thoughts. The thoughts you can put in your mind, and the thoughts you can replay. But you also have the thoughts that other people give to you by auto-suggestion, something I will cover in the following session, and the thoughts that you hear from what you receive from your ear gate and your eye gate. And therefore those thoughts are formulating in your heart and creating a picture that is being imprinted on your subconscious, and you're accepting of that picture, and that starts the resonance process. This stuff is not complicated. A simple way is to understand that every day you have to stand guard at the gate of your mind. And every day you have to choose your association. And if you do so consistently, what you find is you're able to create the right desires, and you're able to push yourself into the right frequency. And when you get to that frequency by choosing the right thoughts of where you want to be and who you want to become, you get to that frequency, you accept it, and you attract it. And suddenly you become it. Now, I hope today's session has been useful.